One of the most important moments in the Kengan Omega story is about to happen right now. Shen Wulong versus Shen Luohan. Probably a fight that we won't see the conclusion of considering where it's actually happening, but of course that's always possible. My opinion has always been that Luohan is one of the more important candidates for the people that will eventually rival Shen Wulong in strength. I think he's ahead of most of the cast in this aspect, but he's one of many candidates, which is something that will play a factor to the last part of the chapter. But other than that, and I think this is the best part of the chapter, Nico has still not beaten the fraud allegations. You love to see it. Anyways, the chapter is called The Long Night. And we start off right where we were in the last chapter. Ohma and Sestuna, they're having their chat. And it seems like Ohma is actually inquiring about what ended up happening between, his master and Setsuna's master as well. And Setsuna, he sort of sets the record straight and kind of clears his master's name to a certain extent, because Setsuna clarifies that there was really no collaboration between Nico and Setsuna's master. Instead, Nico probably got a third party to hire his master to involve him in this situation. So, as expected, slimy moves from Nico. Best part about it, he got his ass whooped as well, even with his slimy tactics. But he won. He became the last Nico here. And Ohma's like, yeah, I probably figured that was what was actually happening, since everyone to Nico, or the last Nico, is disposable, getting used, or getting got, basically. But Setsuna, he sort of asks Ohma, is like, are you actually going for revenge against Nico now? And Ohma's like, he isn't really sure if that's what he wants to do, because we have to remember, since Ashura, the thing that was pushing Ohma towards revenge was mostly because he didn't have the complete data of what was happening. Most of his memories were not really there for him. When he regained these memories, his personality kinda shifted a bit, as well as a drastic improvement in the way he fought. And so, from then, he wasn't as driven by revenge as he was towards the beginning of Ashura. This Ohma is more consistent with the later part of Ohma, but he's still pondering the question. But Setsuna's like, he won't blame him if he actually wants to get revenge for the sake of closure. He won't give him the speech that, revenge is not the thing you're looking for type of speech. But it's also important to remember, and this is something that Ohma says right after Setsuna's like, I won't tell you not to get revenge. Ohma sort of puts into perspective that part of it is that, Ohma was told by his master Togita that he shouldn't kill anyone. That plays a part, but there's also the fact that Ohma's aware that before he met Togita, his master, he was in the inside fighting for his life and probably killed people while doing so. Ohma was pretty ruthless. The reason baby Setsuna or child Setsuna saw that vengeful type of person that could kill him, was mainly because Ohma had those eyes. And so these two things are sort of things that Ohma wants to keep in mind, that he has this nature, this wilder nature, this murderous type of nature he has, as well as, the person that his master sort of wants him to be, taught him to be this way. And that when it comes to making a decision of whether or not to kill Nico, it will come down to really how he feels when he meets him, right? Now, most people want Nico to die, and Nico's probably gonna die somehow. But it's important to keep in mind that Ohma does have hatred towards Nico. He doesn't like him. A part of his nature could probably push him to do it. He has that part of him still. But there is also the part of him that wants to stay true to his original master as well. And so what version, what emotions, what intentions end up winning is only a matter of time. And Ohma seems like he won't be thinking too much about it until he meets Nico. But getting to know what actually happened is important for him right now. Now that's very interesting. I don't know why he's not gonna ask him about his notes, but we move on from that discussion entirely. Because as Setsuna's, congratulating Ohma for his maturity, you know what you don't know, it seems. And he sort of turns away at him, kind of indicating that, doesn't want to actually carry on with the conversation much. Ohma moves on to a different topic, specifically about Setsuna himself. He asks Setsuna what he actually wants to do now, because yeah, he's had his shot, he lost, he could go again, but it doesn't seem like Setsuna is gonna go at Nico again, or he might actually. But he's asking Setsuna here about his future, and Setsuna, unfortunately, he says he has a bad record. It's way too bad. He's probably at the point where there are probably a lot of people that want to kill Setsuna. And that's probably true, because Setsuna's tyranny didn't really stop at when he was a kid. He's done this for years up until he's adult, up until now. And so it's not as easy as it is with Ohma. Chances are, and Setsuna just says it, that one of these days, he's probably gonna get killed by someone. And Ohma sort of offers a life raft for him. It's very interesting because he says, I have a friend, and we see Rama. So Ohma is talking about Rama here. I think it's Rama the 13th. That Rama the 13th could get him a new ID, new life. Basically, you get your golden parachute, Setsuna. Start over, because he still got manipulated into being in the situation that he is in now. Nico's brainwashing plays a pivotal part in Setsuna's own actions and his attitude for half of his life, if not most of it, or at least a good chunk. But Setsuna, he replies, Ohma, you're too kind. Now, that's where the scene ends with this. And my thoughts on it is that doesn't sound like Setsuna's going to accept Ohma's proposal. I don't think Setsuna wants to take Ohma's golden parachute. To me, it just didn't seem that way. So it'll be very interesting to see where Setsuna goes from here. My guess is that if Nico dies, Setsuna will probably eventually calm down. But with that, we transition to Shen Wulong. Shen Wulong is basically leaving Yamashita's house after eating some dinner along with them. And he says his goodbyes and he leaves. And we see, of course, Ryuki, Koga, and Yamashita. They're actually tense when he leaves. The only one who's not tensed up is Yasuo. And that just goes to show just how split Wulong's personality is, because the only reason Koga and Ryuki and Yamashita are on edge is mainly because they know what Wulong is capable of, his organization, as well as, remember, Koga probably knows what Shen Wulong did to Gayamukaku's father and the Dragon Clan as well. They know that there's a side to Wulong that could spell their deaths. Yasuo, he doesn't know that. And so the interface that he's facing right now with Wulong, he seems fine to him. The same thing happened with Ohma as well. Remember, Ohma thought Jackie was just a dude, the guy that drinks with Joji. Then when he was attacking the Kengan Association, he describes it like it was a different individual. So Wulong has a switch, is what I'm wanting to dwell on a bit, because this is a very brief scene, right? Ryuki comments that, Shen Wulong, he's a good guy and all, but, Koga's like, yeah, he's the final boss. Yamashita's like, he's exhausting to be around. I still want people to keep this in mind, because Wulong might be better than, let's say, Luohan or Nico 90% of the time, right? But there is that other time where if you land on that 10%, you at least have hope with Luohan and Nico if you land on their bad sides. You don't with Wulong. And seems like we'll actually see what's actually happening with that. But as he's leaving, Koga is talking to Yamashita. He's like, man, he seems cool enough. Couldn't we just make friends with him and then avoid the final battle? Like, isn't that like, an option in this case because he's this cool? And unless you've played visual novels, that would seem like, hey, that's one ending this could go down, right? We just befriend Shen and the rest of the Kengan Omega is just chill. And Yamashita's like, yeah, if I'm correct about, Shen Wulong, it's technically possible. And we see this is actually very much true because of what we see happen next. Because we see, Wulong is walking in this scene and he makes his mind up about something. He's like, okay then. And then we transition over and it's now broad daylight. The night is over and we seem to be in a residential area. And lo and behold, it is Shen Luohan under the name Bruce Chan. Now, there is something very funny about his alias or disguise name, because if you compare Bruce Chan to Jackie Lee, which is Shen Wulong's name, all of a sudden, you can get Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee. Again, if there were any doubts that these two characters are sort of mirrors of each other, here it is here. Luohan in this scene, he's sort of back from seeing Mount Fuji, he just went sightseeing, chilling out, but now he's returned back from Mount Fuji. And as he goes in to, the place that he is probably staying in right now, he comes in to Nico gasping for dear life. And Luohan is like, why are you out of breath? Now here's what's interesting. I think I know why Nico's out of breath. Specifically that. Mainly because we know there is a breathing technique that Shen Wulong knows. Yep, that's very important. And I think Nico's trying to master that to at least keep himself alive a bit longer. That's the only thing that makes sense, because we end up seeing what's actually happening here, and you'll see as the scene goes on that that's the best explanation. But Luohan, he's like, hey, I told you, don't go for long sessions. Take your time, or at least take what you can. And with that, we get a narration that, of course, this is a hideout that's, outside the normal city. This is where they're laying low for a while. And we see Nico sort of thinking to himself, yeah, this is a very bad sensation that he's having, because it feels like his brain is being overridden right now. But that he's actually managed to learn what he was trying to learn in that moment. And we get a narration of how this is actually happening, how Nico ended up, gasping for air. And they brought basically Shen Wulong's memories, but only a select few of them. There are certain techniques that they seem to want to, drill into their heads a bit more, it seems. And they use the word installation, so they're trying to basically rewire their brains in this way. And we have this VR looking type of headset and this cube-like thing. There's no real technology like this, but it is a fictional world. But that's what's happening. Part of the gasping is the rewiring of the brain that is happening here, and that's probably very straining to what is happening. But Luohan, it's his turn, and he just basically brings some snacks for, Nico to get some carbs as food for his brain, sort of easing the tension. It seems like that's what Nico's trying to do for him and for himself, of course. But when he does that, he puts on the headset himself and he starts, rewiring his brain, which is a pretty intense thing to do. But that's what's happening, and it seems like a lot of time is passing here. And Nico, he's still, a bit tired. He's watching Luohan, he's seated on his seat, and Nico's like, yeah, Luohan has better memory retention than him. So he can go for much longer with the installation, with the rewiring of his brain and memorizing, Shen Wulong's martial arts than he can. And Nico, he's sort of thinking either because of his genes, there's just a compatibility advantage that he has that Nico just can't bridge, or he's just more talented than Nico. Honestly, with the way he was gasping for air and his recent aura loss, I think I know which one it is. But on a more serious note, I think it's a combination of both. I think gene compatibility and the talent, I think, are probably one and the same thing here. These would basically net you pretty good advantages if, Ryuki and Ohma are huge testaments to. But we hear Luohan, he's like, yeah, this is kind of like violence on like a mind level, basically. Like, it is torture. We see there is some nose bleeding going on here. And here it is, the funniest moment in the entire chapter happens right here. Because Nico's thinking to himself, maybe I should just kill Luohan because he's gonna become a problem at this rate to even him, right? The danger that Luohan poses is pretty big. But as he's saying this, while looking at Luohan, behind him, this man kind of slithers in, he sneaks in there. My man just teleported. And this man is Shen Wulong. He's going there. He's like, hey, are those my memories? And we see Nico, because when Wulong says this, Nico knows Wulong's voice. And hearing his voice at this point is pretty bad. And so naturally he starts panicking. You know, he screams out his name, Wulong, because he probably wants Luohan to hear that and come save his ass. But Wulong, he's like, hey, calm down. I'm only here to see Luohan, the man who actually matters. You know, throwing more slander at Nico a bit. I'm just kidding. But Wulong has something to say to Luohan here, and that is that he doesn't want him to be his playmate anymore. He sees that there are other candidates that are also quite promising right now, and that he doesn't even care what he does with these memories. Like, he doesn't really care about them. He actually thinks he's in such a good spot that he doesn't need Luohan. Now that's very interesting because there are a few ways that we can take this, right? The first one is that Wulong is simply saying, Luohan, you're just not good enough. I have other people that are good enough. Go away. I think you could think that. The problem is, if Luohan was really not that dangerous or was going to ultimately get outpaced by the other fighters, why tell Luohan to go away? It's not like Luohan's gonna go around trying to assassinate all the other fighters. Luohan's gaze is pretty much fixed on Wulong here. And so here's what I think is happening. Wulong knows the confrontation between him and Luohan is going to be messy. That people are probably going to die because of their fight. And that, hey, even though I think it's unlikely that Luohan would go for the other fighters, he could, but he's far more dangerous, far more volatile. Again, Wulong called Luohan the true monster. And so chances are he won't be able to coexist with the other candidates. Add on to the fact that the other candidates are willing to, you know, fight Wulong again and again, whereas Luohan, it's going to be either kill or be killed type of situation, and you have a not so great formula here. Wulong is probably thinking about the safety of the people around him. He's thinking about probably the type of entertainment or fun that Luohan could probably provide him, and he's like, nah, probably not worth it. Worst case scenario, this man is the new me, and he becomes a tyranny to the people that, you know, I actually, you know, am vibing with. 2, I beat him, but at the cost of, you know, everyone else potentially. So Luohan needs to get out of the way. He either needs to kill him now or give him, you know, the golden parachute like Ohma was giving Sestuna. But like I think Sestuna didn't take the golden parachute the way out, Luohan doesn't take the way out here. He says, bro, you couldn't be more selfish even if you tried. Bro, you're dying here. So Luohan is basically saying he's going to try to kill Shen Wulong right here. Now, normally, Wulong could just slap this man across the parking lot and nothing would happen. But this is not the same Luohan. There's probably going to be techniques that are going to be used here and very important things that we might actually see. What's interesting is that I do think both Wulong and Luohan could survive this. But again, if Wulong is dead set on killing Luohan right here, then Luohan could possibly die. Same would apply to Wulong as well. The issue is that there's way too much expectations. Everyone kind of wants to fight Wulong. Him dying before the actual match is kind of, it would be weird. It's just way less likely here. And so, yeah, we're in a pretty big pickle right now. It's gonna be interesting to see how this ends up going, but yeah, I like this chapter. I think hopefully, you know, we get to see the fight just kick off right from the beginning of the next chapter. Like, I am hyped to see what happens here. But anyways, that's the video. Don't forget to like and sub, and until next time, take it easy.